Welcome to another episode of Threads of Enlightenment. It is always my honor to stop here for a minute and thank my guests for a couple of things. I really do feel it's very important. I know it's important to me, and so I know that it is important to those that are on the journey as well, and that is their time. I want to thank you so much, Mitch, for time, because time is a valuable thing. A lot of people misuse it, don't understand the purpose of it. But once you're awakened, you understand the value of it and you know how to use it well. And so I want to thank you so much that you are here to spend some of that precious stuff here with us at Threads of Enlightenment. The other is your journey, Mitch, which houses so much stuff. It houses pain, strength, power, defeat, knowledge, wisdom, all of these things. It was you. And so it brought you to who you are today. And it is our honor to be here to engage with you so that we would learn from you to become a better human spirit while we're here on this earth. Welcome to Threads of Enlightenment, sir.
Thank you so much, Ken. I'm so excited to be here. You and I have already had some really amazing conversations, and I'm very much looking forward to having this one too. And hopefully someone out there it resonates with, and it brightens up their day and it helps them connect to some enlightenment.
Excellent. Tell them what you have created so far, because I tell them that we go through our journey, Mitch, for a couple of things. It'll pull out our gift. And once we recognize what it is, we then put it in a format and we live out of this place. And it's a beautiful place to be. So tell them what you have created so far, because I told them that the creator, one of the things that troubles the spirit of a creator is complacency. And once we are awake, complacency becomes one of the enemies that we cannot stand. So talk to them about those things that you've given birth to so far.
Absolutely. Yeah, that reminds me of a euphemism that goes, when there is no fear when the mission to serve is clear. And for me, I'm sure we'll get into kind of like why I got to that point. But after that big inflection point, after my struggles, the point I kind of got is I want to show people that we have been programmed by society. We have been led to believe certain things that have caused us to become so disconnected from our intuition, from our desires, from our knowledge of ourselves, that we don't trust ourselves anymore. We always rely on external messages or external validation, and we go after things that support that, like an expensive car or a nice house or an attractive partner or, degrees or, just various accolades, because we need to get outside confirmation that what we're doing is right, because we're so disconnected from our own intuition. As children, that's just beaten out of us by well-meaning adults, but it is. And I really came to the realization of how much that upset me and how much it upset me to live in a box, to live like a caged animal, and to live like other people wanted me to, and to partake in a society that I don't agree with at a fundamental level. And I was lonely. I felt disconnected. I felt like my life had no meaning. Like I was waking up, sleepwalking through life, and going to bed and having no idea that the day had gone by in a flash, and then the weeks had gone by in a flash, and then the years had gone by in a flash. And so I said to myself, well, I'm pretty professionally accomplished as a programmer, but what is my spiritual mission? What was I put on this earth to do? What is my gift to express? And, that journey started about 2 years or so ago, when I started doing a lot of introspection, a lot of questions, and a lot of curiosity about myself. And I discovered that what I want to do is build community with people. What I want to do is inspire people. And I want to stand up for people that can't do that for themselves or are uncomfortable doing that for themselves. And in that process, I want to wake people up.
That's good, man. So we're going to talk about that, because waking people up is what we try to do here at Threads of Enlightenment. I want to take you back, Mitch, and I call it, most people call it the family. And since I've been on this path, I realized that it was even much more than a family. It was a lab. It is the lab where we have these scientists we call parents, that from their prism of their revelation of whatever trauma they had through their life, they now see and make decisions based on that trauma. Then they are about to deposit some stuff into you and I. And as they began to deposit things, you and I began to learn and make decisions. Talk to me about your family life. How was that your first entry into this world, if you will?
That's definitely a complex and interesting piece of the puzzle. As you've alluded to, the beginnings of the beginnings. I would say certainly many of the beginnings are right there, where I would say, a loving family, but as you said, they are scientists, and scientists try to do their best. But what scientists do is, they start a science experiment, and then they take the things they've learned and they didn't learn, and they start over again. But, with parents, like, a kid grows up and that the things that you've tried are still there. Yeah. And so for me, my childhood was very much, suck it up, keep pushing forward, and don't complain. If your body is telling you you're in pain, ignore it and find the silver lining and keep pushing forward, and if I told my mom I had a headache, she would say, well, come back in 2 hours. And if you still have a headache, you might get half an ibuprofen.
Wow.
So she was very loving and very kind. My mom is one of those people where you look in their eyes and you just see this bright soul living there. A very hardworking, very moral, very good father. But he just, because of his own trauma, lacked the ability to connect on a deep emotional level. So I didn't really grow up with a father in an emotional connection. I grew up with a father where, there's kind of a baseline there. I knew I was cared for, but I didn't have a dad I could talk to about life, or a dad I could learn really deep, meaningful emotions from. And I didn't really see those reflected in him either. And everything I learned about my dad really came through my mom. And my brother and sister, I'm the youngest one. So, of course, I was the annoying little brat. Which I kind of was. So they just kind of distanced themselves from me. And my brother kind of isolated himself in his room behind his computer doing creative stuff. And my sister was usually out of the house. So for me, growing up was very, very lonely in the family unit. I definitely felt very, I would say, unacknowledged and very lonely.
How did those feelings, because I tell people feelings are powerful. It's a powerful drug, because it will help dictate our lives, and based on that particular feeling about a certain situation, we will make decisions. Sometimes they talk about flight and fighting. You come up with different ways. How did you, as a young man, manage yourself with that type of feeling, let's say in high school and stuff like that, around other people outside of your family?
I would say it really carried on. That's an excellent question. For me, school, I didn't fit in. I was very, not necessarily eccentric, but just unusual. I was extremely curious and somewhat ADD. So teachers didn't know what to do with me. Most adults couldn't answer the questions I had because they didn't have an answer themselves. They were programmed by society, and I picked up on that when I was a little kid, and I challenged that, and that made them uncomfortable. So I was more like put in a corner, like stay quiet and don't challenge us. And as I went into more like high school years and teenage years, I would resonate and attract certain people that felt similar things I did, I would say. So I had some companionship here and there, but it wasn't like seeing my friends going out to play soccer or going out to drink beers or going out to do things, and me just kind of, sitting alone in my room, wondering what's wrong with me. And I grew up in the Netherlands. I lived there for 20 years before I moved to the United States when I was 20 years old by enlisting in the Air Force. And that theme kind of carried on where being in the Netherlands, as you said, those emotions become like a drug. And I truly believe that, your body's always trying to get to it's regular, it's normal, it's homeostasis. So you get addicted to emotions, even if they're bad emotions. And the relationships I entered, the things I surrounded myself with, kind of perpetuated, especially my childhood trauma. I had a good deal of childhood trauma during my teenage years and my adolescent years. And the partners I attracted and such kind of perpetuated that trauma. And so right up until I left for America, I'd always kind of been in that like unacknowledged, unseen, lonely place. And by that time, I'd already moved to 3 different cities in the Netherlands. And then when I enlisted in the Air Force, I've moved to 7 different states in America since then, and many dozens of cities here. So I would say that theme continued in the sense that it's always been very easy for me to just pack my bags and move across the country because I didn't have very meaningful, close relationships. And so there was nothing tying me to this particular spot on earth. And yeah.
Let me ask you a question, Mitch. Why did you gravitate towards the forces versus going into let's say college or something like that? What was it that drove you towards that area first?
Well, I would say at the time, I had a very different image of strength. Again, the way I kind of perceived masculinity and strength and, I suppose gender roles and these different things. I think I really saw the military as, discipline, strength, things I grew up with, right, from my father, who was also in the military. And he never really made any indication that he wanted me to go in the military. In fact, he probably thought it was a terrible idea because he knew how anti-authoritarian I am. But as always, he let me go my way. And I think I went the route of the military because I knew that it would set me up for success in the US. And I didn't know anything about college. I didn't know how college worked here. So, I looked up on the internet a little bit and it was also confusing. I just said, you know what, I'm just going to go with the military. It will be a challenge, and which is something I really like. It had that image of strength that I had at the time. And it seemed like the best way forward at the time. And it's not something I would do now, but if I went back in time, I certainly wouldn't change a thing. But yeah, that's how that started.
So when you went into the military, because one of the perception about the military is that they began to, if you will, began to teach you the power of the mind, especially when it comes to training and introducing that aspect into your living and making one aware of pushing the self beyond the self, if you will. Talk to us as to when you discovered that type of mentality and that type of belief system. How did you assimilate into it? Did you fight it, or were you excited to have this new way of thinking and believing?
I love that. So I would say I was warmed up to that mindset a little bit already, just because of the way I grew up and just because of how much I had already been pushing myself. But it definitely was an all other level when I was in the military. Imagine, well, you've moved to a different part of the planet, but imagine when you've lived for 20 years, at 20 years old, you move to the other side of the planet, and then for 8 weeks, everything is taken from you, all your clothes, you don't have your phone, you have nothing to contact anyone with. All I could do is write letters, and that would take 3 to 4 weeks to get to the Netherlands. And so, you're in like this giant dormitory with like 50 other recruits, and you're kind of like, oh shit, what did I do? And there's marching and extreme exercising, like especially the career field I was in. It was a horrendous amount of exercise, and of course I enjoyed it, but it was definitely to the point where it resulted in a lot of injury and sickness. And at that point, I kind of discovered that no matter how the body feels, no matter how tired it is, no matter how much you feel like you can't do more, the mind can always do more. The mind will keep going until your body is completely and utterly broken. And it goes so much farther than we realize. And of course, there's pros and cons to that. There's situations where we need to push the body because their survival depends on it. But there's also cases like my case where it's kind of not so great during that time anyway, because your body suffers from it so much. But because of that, and we can get into that if you want later, but because of that, I really hit a low point where I really discovered my spiritual strength. And that's when I realized, like, yes, my body is weak, but I am not my body. I am my mind, and I am the energy within my body. And when I had that realization, something in my mind just clicked, and I just realized how separate our body is, and that we don't have a mind, that it isn't the body that manifests the mind, but that it's the mind that manifests the body, and how much strength there is to the mind.
Yeah, we have been programmed to look from strength from the outside in, and the original design is from the inside out.
Yes.
So that's why I asked that question, because once you are aware of it, especially the military, they will push you to a different level and cause you to experience that separation between the body and mind. You know it when you get there, and you know how it can be broken, but yet it could still move. So here you are in the military, Mitch. They're pushing you to the limit. They're breaking you physically and mentally, all of that stuff. And you are here, but it's beginning to, as they say, beginning to make you aware of the separation of body and the mind and all of the power that houses within that. So you had mentioned briefly, as you were talking about breaking down the body. Talk to us a little about when you got there, when the body said, you know what, I need a break. I understand that you're all this mental stuff, but I don't think I'm going to come along on this ride. And it sounds like it revolted a little on you. Talk to us about that.
Sure. Yeah. So, that was, I would say, a 4 to 5 year development. But the way it started is that when I was in training, at some point, my legs were really hurting and my back was really hurting. I had shin splints. I had all these weird pains and tingling feelings. And I was going through like a bottle of ibuprofen like every other day or so, like a couple of weeks. Wow. I was taking so much ibuprofen because of course you can't go to a doctor, you can't get anything prescribed. You can only get something, from a grocery store, because going to a doctor will get you disqualified. And eventually those problems really only started building and building and building. And I was switched career fields. I quit that specific program just because I felt like my body could no longer take it. And when I was reclassified into air traffic control, I was able to take things quite a little bit easier, but I still had this, intense desire to do really well my physical testing. Like I always got you have to do yearly, or if you do really well, you go once a year. If you have a lower score, you have to go twice a year. But it's running, push-ups, measurements, all these things to make sure people are fit. And I always made sure to get 99.5 or even 100% of those tests. So I really pushed myself. And I also was really big into weightlifting because it was a great way to challenge myself and to move beyond those obstacles and to show me, hey, the mind is more powerful than the body. And at some point, again, it got to the point where I couldn't exercise myself anymore. And that built up so much stress, so much anxiety, and so much, depression that I really didn't have a choice except going to the doctors. And when they made their diagnosis, I have a broken back and some other nerve conditions. When they made that determination, I was disqualified from air traffic control. And then I had 2 years left on my contract. So now it was, I'm dealing with all these mental health issues. I'm dealing with all these pains in my body. And I could get sent to another state because I just lost my job. I'm going to get retrained, and then they're going to send me to a different state for a different school, and then in a different state or a different country to do that job. So, there was all this mental pain of both from the past and the future, as well as all this pain in my body. And I just completely broke down. I failed to function as a human being. I no longer took care of myself. I didn't take regular showers. I didn't regularly brush my teeth. I didn't clean up my house. I didn't walk my dogs. I just became this dead shell of a person, just pretending to be alive so that nobody would pay too much attention. And it was really at that point where at some point I said, this is not a way to live. And I recognized that. And I think that's really when I started getting curious about things beyond the physical, about my mind, about spirituality. I'd never been very spiritual before that. I'd always had a very visceral, negative reaction because of the religion, the impact religion has had on my life, like all the damage I'd seen it done. And so it wasn't until that point that I really started, exploring that.
Talk to me about that, because I always tell people, I call it Mitch, the day of visitation, and it shows up, as I mentioned earlier, shows up in so many different forms. And that day is a dark day. And I tell people, I grew up in the church, and I remember reading the Bible, and it said that God showed up when it was dark. Darkness was upon the earth, and then he showed up. And I always find that pretty fascinating, because I remember I had all these things when I had my dark days. And I remember going back into that and said, wait a minute, if he can create, I want to create just like him. And so I went back into that Bible, and I pulled out the principles by which he created. And as I began to learn my journey, and as I've grown in my journey, I realized that the purpose of the darkness, Mitch, is to awaken the creator, because the creator is not needed until there's some darkness, because you and I are having so much fun in breaking down our life. As we say, we're just making a mess out of it. And the creator is residing with us, inside of us, looking at us going, this guy is absolutely crazy. I want to help him, but he's not giving me the opportunity to help him. And in fact, he doesn't even know that I exist. So a situation needs to be created so that we can see that this creator exists. And just like you said, one of the very first things God did when he said, and you and I do the same principles. You just told me, Mitch, that you said to yourself, I can't do this. And so you initiated the process by which now you're going to create. And I tell people, don't be afraid of the darkness. There's someone there that wants to introduce himself to you that is deeper within you. And you just need to give him the opportunity. Get on your knees and say, I messed up. Or talk to yourself. I'm talking when you break down, you're crying. He's like, I messed up really bad, man. I need you to come out and help me out. So talk to us right here, Mitch, right here, because this is a dark place. Your body is broken. The body is the thing in your field of choice, is necessary in order to move. The mind is necessary in order to move because of, again, your field. Both of them have give out, if you will. And here you are, that little creator inside of you said, So now talk to us right here at this space, Mitch. When you made that decision, and I call it the statement of faith, you believe this thing more than anyone else because it's now going to govern your life. What was that statement that you made, and what was the steps, Mitch, that you took to start walking? Because that is a dark place.
Wow, that's incredibly insightful question. It's funny. It happened exactly as you said. On that day, when everything just seemed to crescendo and my mind was broken and my body was broken, and I thought to myself, I can't do this anymore. And this scary thought came up in my head, and it was, what if I ended it? What if I found a way to end life? And of course, those thoughts have been with me for quite some time. Yeah. But then I felt something within me say, you don't have the right to. You don't have control over something like that. You don't have the right to do that. And then I said to myself, almost a surrender, where I said, okay, if I don't have control over that, then I'll surrender to whoever does or whatever does. And in my mind, at that time, the best way to summarize it is a passage from the Bible where it goes, Lord, here I am, send me. And in that moment, I realized that everything I had been through and everything that I'd experienced was so that I could lessen that for other people. Like if I could find a way to reduce other people's pain, to reduce other people's suffering, then that was going to take away my own suffering too. And in that moment of darkness, that light that came was knowing that there was a way forward by having a positive impact on the world, by taking away suffering rather than adding to it, which I think I had been doing. And the steps I took from there on were taking care of myself, figuring out what is it that I need. And at that time, it was not getting another career field. So I pleaded with leadership to just discharge me. I said, please just discharge me. At this point, I don't care if it's honorable or dishonorable. And luckily, I did get honorable. But I said, I can't do this anymore. I want to go my own way. I need to take care of myself. And the second thing I did is I stopped hurting my body. I stopped doing the weightlifting, which was really hurting my body. I stopped all sorts of habits that were really not good for my body. So I started taking care of myself, and I started building myself up in ways that I knew were right for me. And that's different for everyone, but I got curious about myself. I really started listening to my pain. And instead of trying to suppress it, I started asking myself, what is my body telling me? Like, what sorts of activities does it want to do? What sorts of information does it want to listen to? What sorts of people does it want to be around? You know, how does it want to be treated? How does it want to be made to feel? Like the authentic me, not the version of me that was programmed by society, but the little scared kid inside of me. What does he need?
Yeah.
And once I got to that place where I had some footing, I started developing myself professionally, and I started building some security around my life, you know, being able to have living arrangement and being able to properly take care of myself financially. And once I got to that point, I started asking, how can I radiate this outwards to the world? It's like, how can I pay everything that I've learned, all the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books I've read, all the thousands of dollars I've spent on retreats, on coaching? How can I pay that forward? And then I realized it's by finding people that have similar feelings as I do, and by writing to them, writing about my experiences with mental health, writing about them, about my habits and the things I've learned, and sharing the wisdom and engaging people in conversation. And those are the steps that I've taken. And I'm not sure what the next one is, but I would say that's kind of the bird's eye view of the major steps that I took, from, you know, physical to mental to spiritual.
Yeah, I think you were, and I know it sounds a little crude, but I absolutely believe it, Mitch. I believe the need was so great with folks like you that someone had to go through it that would be trusted enough,
Yes.
in order that once they come out on the other side, they would not become a miser, a hoarder, if you will, of the knowledge, of the wisdom, the tools that you gained to come out of the darkness, to then turn back and become one of the greatest things I've ever positioned that is ever given to a human being. And that is to serve another human being. And I believe because you could have been trusted with the journey, that you were chosen and you came out. And there's a scripture in the Bible that comes to my mind. It says, you are now able to comfort those with the comfort that you got while you went through your journey.
Yes.
And so that when you, what happens when you go through and you're able to do that? Well, a couple of things, Mitch. When you speak on that subject, you know firsthand, and the words that you are speaking is so powerful because it is you. Because it's not, you just had the book knowledge, you have the experience. And I believe that when you speak with that power from the experience, the hearer of your words, Mitch, they feel it, because I believe it comes with such power that they recognize it. That's why when you stand and you tell your story, someone will be coming to you and say, man, what you said, hit me right here. Because why? The power that you release with those words will find some heart that needs it, that are in that pain, and bring them to you so that you can give them the additional information that is necessary for them to get out where they need to get out. And so that's what I felt that, I believe we all are chosen to go through it because we could be trusted with the information to become a servant.
Thank you, Ken. I think that's beautifully and eloquently worded. I think you summarized what I feel intuitively, beautifully into words. And I think for a long time, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, and maybe many listeners, I was so angry. It reminds me a little bit of the book of Job, where I was so angry. And I just, there are times when I just yelled at the ceiling. I'm like, God, if you're real, then why am I going through this? If you're supposed to be good, then why have I never been alive? Why have all these things happened to me? And I had so much anger and frustration. And now, as you said, I consider it my greatest gift because it gives my life meaning. And I don't have to sleepwalk through life. I don't have to live like a programmed robot in Western society, wasting my days doing things that are inconsequential to me, which it's given me a meaning in life, and it's given me a way to serve people. And as you said, I think that's the highest calling. And I know this was the path I was supposed to walk, and I have nothing but gratitude for it now, in a clear direction of where I want to go, and so much excitement for the future.
Yeah, I tell people, in this life, find your purpose, and it will make you purposeful. So, talk to me, Mitch, about one of those tools that you utilize, because you had to use something as you began to move through your journey. People, some use meditation, some use journaling, some use all
Yeah.
running, whatever those tools were. What were some of those tools that you personally relied on to begin to strengthen your spirit, soul, and body as you began to move through your daily practice and your daily awakening while you were here on this planet?
So for me, the one I started with was meditation. I've always been, I've had trouble sitting still, ADD, whatever you want to label it. But, so I had to start slow, but I decided to start with 5 minutes and add 5 minutes every month. So essentially, January do 5 minutes, February do 10 minutes. And so after a year, I ended up being able to do an hour of meditation. And that habit started probably, I would say 4 years or so ago. And I've meditated almost every day since. I don't do an hour anymore now, although I would love to get back to it, but it's just something I needed to prove to myself, I suppose. And I have these memories of meditating as a child and feeling like I was floating out of my body. It was something my mom introduced me to. And so I've always wanted to get back to that feeling where I just felt so free from disturbances and anxiety that I just existed as pure energy. And I get fleeting moments of that now still a lot. And the meditation has allowed me to, I think, physically rewire my brain, and mentally and spiritually allowed me to really connect to my higher self and get like this rest, this equanimity, this peace that I can kind of take with me and smile at other people and love other people instead of just wanting to see the bad in everything. And so meditation has been huge for me, and I recommend it to anyone. And I coupled that with journaling, where, I think it's, as you said, we're explorers of ourselves, of our mind. And I think that journaling is a great way to engage the whole mind, all the different areas of the brain, and to really lean into the curiosity, like talking about the things that excites you, talking about the things that scare you, and talk about the things that are helping you. And then being able to go back to it like a year later or months later and reflecting on that, and just seeing a completely different person, and just understanding that your thoughts in the moment are completely different from what they will be. And just seeing how much you've grown, or seeing how much things have changed, or seeing how much things have stayed the same, the things that you enjoy. I would say journaling and meditation in that sense, because of those reasons, are some of my biggest tools.
I think for me, it was meditation. Meditation was where I controlled my day before it even existed and moved. And so as I began meditating, I remember the same thing. My mind would be dancing all over the place. And I got to a point where I can go beyond an hour and stuff like that. And I've gotten, the thing about meditation, and I tell people, Mitch, is that it may take you some time to get to where you need to, but after you get there to that place where you can put yourself, being in this state is, if you will, meditation is to take you into the state. I keep telling them that breath is between the spiritual and the natural. When you do your meditation, you walk in. If you quiet yourself and you begin to take some deep breath, you will take a breath that will transport you from the natural realm into the spiritual realm, and you will know it. And as you said, you saw yourself, or you felt yourself floating. That is, I have done that. I have actually had out-of-body experiences where I was moving beyond different planes, if you will. And I remember having to pull myself back into my body, because it was a new area, and I was not, I didn't think I was strong enough to get there yet, because sometimes you can get lost. And so I had to bring myself.
It's scary.
It is a scary thing. But now, Mitch, I can take myself into that space, if you will, in 5 minutes, where it would take me an hour before. because I know how to get there quicker. And that 5 minutes,
Right.
I would be deep in 5 minutes before where it would take me an hour to get. So you may not need the hour. You may just need a 10 minute one, instead of
Right.
the
It's
hour.
whatever's needed.
Yes, it is. And that's what I tell people. Do not become dogmatic when it comes to your growth. Allow yourself the space to get tired. Allow yourself to say, I don't feel like it, but
Yes.
don't be judgmental, but
Yes.
allow yourself the space to grow. Allow yourself the space to heal because you are learning about you. As Mitch had said, we begin to start investigating about ourselves and we start utilizing tools that we find from our studies and our looking and searching that we can then apply to our own self and begin to create this new person that we are. So, Mitch, you
Sure.
started incorporating these tools. Talk to us about the rewiring of one's brain, because that is a powerful thing that you must do in order, because
Mhm.
you were programmed before. And your programming, your past programming, as the computer says, sometimes you have to clean that hard drive. Sometimes you need to put in there's a virus there and you have to put a virus cleaner to clean it up.
Yes.
So as you begin to take your virus cleaner, which is your meditation and your journaling, talk to us about how did you begin to notice you in that space? Here's this young man with all of the trauma. How did you look to you, if you will?
I would say it took small action. I knew that if I started just with like a 5 minute meditation, I wouldn't return those moments of immediately floating out of my body. I knew that I had to build up to it, and I knew that if I were to start a longer session right away, I would quit before I knew it, because that's not something that would have been very easy for me, as probably for most people.
Yeah.
And I also knew that a lot of the beliefs I had around myself, the way I responded to things, like let's say you're scrolling through a social media feed and you see certain things that trigger you, or you're listening to advertisements or watching TV and just things that trigger you. I knew there were a lot of messages that I had internalized by society about, being unworthy or not being loved, or about being damaged, or, XYZ, all these different beliefs. And so I picked up on these messages. I knew they were there, and I knew that just challenging those beliefs and just keeping yourself, like reframing everything, it's not always going to resolve the underlying cause. And I think that's kind of when I got into meditation and reprogramming the brain, because I knew that there's all these just like highways in the brain, all these neural
Yes.
pathways, and they've
Mm-hmm.
been they've been laid like that for decades in my case. For most of the things we do, they're the beginning of the beginnings are all in our brain. And so
Yes.
I knew that to get a certain kind of control, I had to rewire it for peace. Like I had to stop coming from a place of scarcity, from a place of fear. I had to start coming from a place of abundance and love and gratitude and connection. And for meditation, the way I think what that did for me is when I had those moments of peace, of calm, I got connected to myself. Like I noticed what I really am as a person, like this being of light and energy that is nothing but love, that has no judgment, that has no language, that has no need to see himself from separate as others, or even see himself as a man or any gender or sexual orientation, but rather just this awareness that is observing the present. And that takes over, or that bleeds over into your personal life. When you live without meditation, you have all those judgments, you have all that programming, and you're not aware of them. There's a lot of questions that are unanswered, or even if
Yeah.
you may not even be asking those questions. But when you do the meditation, and what that did for me and how it showed up is that if I went through my days and I had those judgments and I had those ideas, it started building that awareness to not necessarily directly challenge them, but to just observe them and to just say like, hey, you know what? I'm on a walk and I'm looking at people and I'm forming all these judgments and opinions about them. What does that say about me? And that's when I really noticed my brain changing, because instead of waking up and, moving through my days with anxiety and some sense of urgency, I noticed that I started getting these periods of time where I felt very peaceful during the day, and where I would walk around and just want to hug people and just want to tell them I love them, even though I'd never seen them before. And that's really how I noticed my brain changing, where it wasn't like this super busy street of, thoughts passing by like cars, one after the other. It started becoming more like this serene garden where I was able to love and appreciate everything around me.
Let me tell you guys what meditation does. Meditation slows the thoughts that comes to our head. Because when you and I are living, we are so busy that when the thought comes, those thoughts that we coming, and they're coming by a million of them a minute, that we don't, how we live our life is we just exist. But when you put yourself in a state of awareness through meditation, you are now making true choices. That's the difference between one that is walking without meditation and the one that is walking with meditation, is that meditation will allow you to make choices, to begin to identify the thought patterns and thoughts that come in and reasons, and you begin to question all of those things. And as you begin to learn from yourself, as you begin to answer those things and see, it will alert you to the greatness that is you and all of the noise that is outside of you. Guys, every single one of you that are listening to this conversation with Mitch, and you are in a dark place, your body doesn't work anymore. Your mind is just quit on you and says, I'm done. As Mitch said, you get to that place and you think, is it worth it to live? I want to check out. I got someone here that I'm talking to you guys that can help you out, can help guide you. They're called coaches and so forth, but I call them more so that they're guides. They are going to teach you how to ask those questions that they have asked to help you to see the greatness in you, to get you your desired outcome. He is going to guide you. I got someone and I'm talking to him, and I want you guys to reach out to Mitch, get into his space, because we don't want any of you to be in that place where he was. And I can hear him, how he talks about the pain, and he doesn't want you there either. And he knows how to hold your hands, and he knows how to empathize with you, because, guys, he has been there. And with his guidance, you will come out much faster than if you were just doing it by yourself. Get in touch with Mitch and pull everything out of him, and I'm sure he's going to love it. So here you are, Mitch. You began to learn all these different tools, and you began to put it together. What was your process then to begin to move forward, to become and begin to initiate your servanthood type of lifestyle, if you will?
So my biggest change, or my biggest journey into servanthood, was community, like getting focused on community. Before that, I'd always been very isolated. I'd always been very individualistic, like focused on me with these beliefs of, oh, nobody's going to keep me safe. The world's a dangerous place. I have to do it myself. I can't trust anyone. And I completely turned that around. I turned that into the opposite. I said, the reason we're strong as a human species is because of our diversity. It's because of teamwork. It's because of connection. And so I got focused on that. I got focused on, how can I help other people? If a friend needs to ride to the airport, I'll do it. If a friend needs to talk about something emotional, I'll do it. I wanted to show up in every way for people that were important to me, right? Because you can't do that for everyone. That's the quickest way to burn out. But I said, who is important to me and how can I show up for them? And so I built community. I did, I started rock climbing, which is very community-based physical activity, or surfing, which you can do with other people. I started doing all these physical activities I could do together with other people instead of just working out by myself. And I also learned to also take care of myself again. So doing the meditation, doing the journaling, having a morning routine, like getting up before work and doing things that the day starts on my terms, and then taking that out and projecting that onto my community, contributing and getting curious about other people and supporting them and inspiring them and getting inspired by them. And so the biggest things I really learned are how to build behaviors around keeping me not just mentally healthy, but also happy, and that such habits like meditating and journaling and, exercising. And so what I did is I got curious about my needs, and I built habits around that, as well as, what is it I want to provide to the world? And I built habits around that too, like, blogging or putting videos on YouTube or writing and speaking. And that's how I went about it.
That's awesome, man. Again, people, I need you guys to get in touch with Mitch. He has come and he has released to us his energy, his wisdom, all that he is and all that he was, so that you can partake of him, gain insight, and know that he's here to be a part of the community that you need. And I commend you guys to begin to start reaching out to him and become a part of his community. Mitch, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment, sir. I absolutely appreciated this, and I will continue to lift you up so that you can grow this community. And I always tell people we got to grow it so that we can change this world, man.
Thank you. Thank you, Ken. I had an amazing conversation. It was so good getting to talk to you, and I hope some people, listening got value out of it. And I'd love to share with you. We spoke about these habits. I actually wrote a little ebook about them that people can download from my website at thedebuglife.com. And that kind of talks about like which habits I use and exactly how to implement them. Like how to meditate, like how to actually do these things, and when I do them and such. And so people can check me out there if they want. But thank you so much for having me. It was very enlightening to talk to you.
Oh, thank you, sir. And I'm going to provide everything for them, Mitch, so that they can get this ebook. Guys, I know the ebook talks about all kinds of stuff. I was reading some of his blog and posts that he has out here, and it is rich. And you need to get in touch with him, get that book, and begin to taste your freedom and envision your peace. As Mitch said, peace is invaluable. Again, thank you so much, man.
Yes. Thank you.